In this video, we're going to review how to solve one-step, two-step, and multi-step equations. So remember, your goal is to get the variable alone by using inverse operations. So our inverse operations, if you're adding, the inverse would be to subtract. If you're multiplying, the inverse would be to divide. And then the one that we use sometimes, if you're squaring something, the inverse would be to take the square root. So here's a simple one-step equation. Looking at x, we're dividing x by 7. So to undo division, you're going to need to multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. That will cancel the divide by 7 out, so you're left with just x is equal to negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. So your final answer is x equals negative 14. Now this is a two-step equation. So here, we're trying to at first get 2x by itself. So we need to undo the add 3. So we will undo that by subtracting 3, and we'll do that to both sides. So you get 2x is equal to 12 minus 3 is 9. And now we have to undo multiplication. So to undo multiplication, you will divide. And we'll do it to both sides. So that gives us just x is equal to 4.5. Or you could leave it as 9 over 2 as your final answer. So these two-step equations, they look very similar, but we have to treat them very differently. So on the one on the left, this x over 2 is the last thing that we're going to touch. Whereas on the right, the last thing we can touch is the top of our fraction, the numerator, the x minus 10. So on the left, if I'm leaving the x divided by 2 by itself, then I need to add 10 to both sides. So I have the x over 2 is equal to 6 plus 10 gives me 16. Now I can undo the division by multiplying both sides by 2. And you get x is 32 as your final answer. Now on the right, if I don't want to touch the top, then I need to undo the divide by 2 first. So to undo divide by 2, I need to multiply both sides by 2. So that's going to cancel our bottom out. We're left with x minus 10 from the top. And then 6 times 2 is 12. Add 10 to both sides. So our final answer, x equals 22. So now let's look at this example with a fraction. So I think it's easier to write the fraction where all of 3x is in the numerator on the top. So if that's the case, once again, we're leaving the top for last. So we need to undo the divide by 2. So we'll multiply both sides by 2. So that gives us 3x is equal to 8. Divide by 3. And that gives you x is equal to 8/3 or 2.67. Either answer will be acceptable. So now let's look at one where you have parentheses. So if we have parentheses, then the first thing we have to do is distribute. So we're going to distribute inside our parentheses. Remember, we have a 1 in front of our variable. So 3 times 1 is 3s. 3 times 2 is positive 6. And then equals negative 5 comes down. So I'm trying to get 3s by itself, so I need to undo the add 6. So I will subtract 6 to both sides. So the 3s comes down. Negative 5 minus 6 is negative 11. Divide by 3. And you get s is equal to negative 11 over 3, or negative 3.67. Either of those answers. So now let's look at one last example. Remember, we have to distribute first when we have those parentheses. But we are distributing that to and the sign. So that negative 2 needs to get that negative sign needs to get distributed. So our negative 6p is not going to change, so that's going to come down. Negative 2 times positive 1 is negative 2, so minus 2. Negative 2 times 4p is a minus 8p is equal to 124. So now I have some like terms that I can combine. So negative 6p minus 8p, I'm following the signs, is going to give me negative 14p. Bring down the minus 2 is equal to 124. So I'll add 2 to both sides. So negative 14p is equal to 126. Then I need to divide by negative 14. And we get p is equal to negative 9. So that's all for this video on reviewing how to solve one-step, two-step, and multi-step equations.